So we had an interruption with this session, and we start again after the force majeure has been resolved. Sanjay, to follow up on what we were telling just before, we need to define for this model refinery to give a name to the project first. So we will find a creative name for this refinery, for this project, and we have to define as well a location. So you already mentioned it would be on the East Coast. Can we be a bit more precise with that? Where are we going to put that model refinery?
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm sorry about the glitch. Yesterday there was some disruption. I think let's pick up the link from there. Two or three things, just a subtle point, yesterday we were discussing, we had established the capacity of the refinery in a way, and then we were trying to promulgate some basic premises as to how a refinery should be conceived, why we should talk of a particular capacity, what is the kind of intent which we have, and give it a flexibility so that it can swing between distillates and petrochemicals, with the intention of maximizing petrochemicals. Because when you look at India, though there is growth in the distillates, though there is growth in the economy, there is requirement of more and more distillates, but still I think the growth of the petrochemicals is a lot higher. So that was one part. So that's why I'm trying to just briefly recall as to what we discussed.
Yeah.
We established a basic 20 million tons capacity, gave it an orientation of petrochemicals, and we're trying to maximize petrochemicals at the expense of distillates. And what I mentioned was that in India, we have a lot of capacity sitting on the western front. For obvious reasons that we are closer to Middle East, there is always a case of lots of crude to be imported from there. So most of our crude terminals and refineries, particularly the large capacity, sit along the western coast of India. And then we have a pipeline network which is connecting both crude as well as products from various refineries into a central network which carries on the distillate, carries forward the crude as well as the distillates all across India. And the other important point which you would have noticed is that we are spread all over, including some refineries which are there landlocked sitting up north. But predominantly, if you notice, along the peninsula, the intention has been there to put as many refineries as is possible for obvious reasons. Uh, because of this strategic shift, which I mentioned, and even for security reasons, that most of our western coast can apparently be vulnerable to external threats also, there is a distinct thought that we should move east for two good reasons. One is that east needs a lot more capacity. The second part is there is a lot of investigation which is happening in terms of offshore exploration in the Bay of Bengal. So current indications are that we might strike a lot of oil and gas out there. Lots of contracts with foreign majors have been reworked. There's a lot of exploration activity which is expected to be undertaken. These are, of course, going to be very deep sea kind of exploration. So, A, it's going to be time consuming, B, it's going to be an expensive affair. But if we do strike oil in that region, then obviously there is a proximity which can also be exploited through the eastern coast. So, that is one more incentive as to why we should go east. The other important part is if you look into the Southeast Asia Pacific geopolitically, India has a lot of interests in Australia, around Japan, Indonesia, and all these countries in the Southeast Asian bloc. And if you notice, with what has been happening in the recent past, there has been a lot of initiative to also look eastwards to try and see as to we can source our hydrocarbons from Australia because they are rich in gas, you know. So there is a chance that there could be a lot of gas which could be imported from Australia, and perhaps there could be a chance to export distillates from here to Australia also at certain point in time. Similarly, I thought even in the other countries which are sitting around the block, be it Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., going right up to Japan and Korea. Of course, Korea is self-sufficient, so is Japan. But then, of course, there is always a potential because these people also import not only crude but a lot of other materials from the Middle East. Perhaps as India is beginning to become a hub, so there is a distinct possibility that in the midterm or the near midterm, there could be an emphasis to also have some engagement towards this side. So that's why what I thought was if you look into the eastern coast, although there are some refineries out there, but to be very honest with you, none of them are very big refineries. They are all 10, 12 million tons, right from Bay of Bengal, where you have Haldia Refinery. Sorry, that's in West Bengal. Then, of course, in Orissa, we have another refinery. This is the recent one, which has become a big refinery. It's a 15 million ton grassroots refinery, which is also horizontally expanding into a petrochemical complex. The aromatic complex is coming up fast. There is one refinery which is already proposed in the Andhra Pradesh region. The go ahead for that has been received. I think they are looking at about 12 million tons to start with. But if you come down south near Chennai, that's another region where perhaps there is potential of a good market in and around which can cater in southern India. Plus, there could be a good bracket to look from there to export eastwards. So I think we can look at one of the prospective location in the Tamil Nadu or Chennai region and look for the plant to be installed out there. Till such time as we have a name for the project, let's call it a dream project. So I think that also sounds interesting. Let's call it a dream project. So that's
Dream
what.
dream project, the dream refinery.
Well, okay, let's call it a dream refinery. Now,
Dream
as I
refinery. Oh,
mentioned,
it's
even yesterday, while along the coast, wherever we have these refineries, we have followed a multiple approach for the because most of the crude is to be imported. So obviously, we need facilities by which we can transport crude into the refinery per se. So we want VLCCs and ultra VLCCs to park somewhere. And since in the continental shelf are very close to the shore, the draft is not as much. So you have to be somewhere in mid seas. So typically around 20 to 30 kilometers. I mean, we find a good draft is available of let's say 20, 30 meters, wherein most of our SPMs sit. So in case we are going to put for this dream project, there will be crude SPMs, maybe two of them, which would be sitting somewhere so that we could unload the crude from the VLCs from there and transport it onto the refinery. Now, depending upon what is going to be the export orientation, one could have one or more than one product SPMs also. And for smaller cargoes, invariably when we go for such a big refinery, there is a small jetty which anyway is built. So that is the kind of activity which will happen in terms of an infrastructure build on the offshore segment when we do the refinery per se. And once the crude is in the refinery, then of course, as we were discussing yesterday, we will have the crude distillation unit, and we discussed about the MS block, which would look very different in terms of an aromatic orientation. So all the straight run LPG could be one product, but could be a potential product for a petrochemical complex. The entire full range naphtha could go to a desulfurization unit where we could hydrotreat it, split the naphtha into light and heavy range, and the light naphtha could be a potential feedstock to the cracker. Assuming that we have lots of LNG plants in the vicinity in the eastern bloc, which have already come up, some of them are already installed, others are in the process of being installed or completed. So there would be a good chance to integrate LNG to the refinery. So most of the hydrogen production, I'm assuming, for a future refinery should actually come from the natural gas. So that gives us a chance to see to it that the naphtha, whatever is being utilized earlier on to generate hydrogen, could be routed into the olefin complex, the lighter naphtha I meant. So there is no need
Okay,
for
on this point, so now you say hydrogen should mostly come from natural gas, so it will be steam methane reforming. And yesterday we were talking, so in the previous part one on this topic, we were talking about green hydrogen. So we would
Yes.
have competitive solutions,
yes.
yeah, to provide hydrogen to the complex. Yeah. So the idea here would be that when we do the model refinery, we do a base configuration, a reference configuration, and then we do a comparative configuration where we replace some assets. We do one configuration with SMR and one configuration with green hydrogen, so water electrolysis, and we can compare the two from an economic viewpoint. Do the financials, the economic calculation, the cost estimate for the two comparative configurations.
Perfect. Actually, that is precisely what I have in mind. We will build the dream project conventionally, and then on that we'll horizontally integrate it to all the novelties. One of them is green
Yes.
hydrogen. We will discuss onto that as to what is the extent of hydrogen displacement we'll do. We will also look into the horizontal expansion that once I have green hydrogen, what else can we do with respect to CO2 abatement? We will discuss that aspect also. Then we will also discuss as to what we can do with respect to SAF and so many other things which are happening,
Yeah, yeah.
which need to come into a modern refinery when we are looking at that. But my initial intention is to build a model project first of all, and
Yeah.
then begin to integrate it with all these things. So we will gradually displace many things. Hydrogen is one of them. We can also discuss biomass, how to integrate that. We can discuss how to bring renewables and integrate that even further. We can look at green ammonia. We can look into nuclear integration, so many other things. And we will build these add-on cases with a base case, and then see how
Best
does it
case.
look like maybe 5 years, 6 years, 8 years down the line. And then I think that will give a very good overview of the whole perspective around the dream project and how it should look like. And I think it should be very interesting. And as we go
Yeah.
along, there can be a lot of debate, because this is one area in which there are lots of new things also which are emerging. So all those we will try to integrate into the system. Perfect. I think that's no problem. And hydrogen certainly is going to be one potential area. Even now, actually, in a small way, yeah, well, it's maybe just a side diversification. I mean, let me just tell you a little bit on that. Even now, we are looking into green hydrogen being integrated with the refineries. But the extent for that is not much. When I build the model refinery, I'll tell you what is the order of magnitude of hydrogen which we are looking at for a typical composition, and the magnitude being very strong. Uh, Currently, the economics does not support green hydrogen integration, but it is just a matter of time. We all know there is a lot of upgradation of technology which is happening, and we will see how best we can put into this and look into the economics, how it varies. Because once I don't go through the SMR process and I use green hydrogen, I get a lot of advantage on CO2. So in terms of CO2 footprint and many other things, there are immediate direct advantages which accrue in the refining complex as such. So we will
What
discuss all.
about what about gasification, coal gasification as another
Yes.
potential
Yeah,
source of
we,
hydrogen?
we will discuss that, because I think as I build the plant, I will discuss as to what we have looked into that option. We have considered in several refineries to use Petcoke, which is produced from the refinery per se, also mix it with some coal, go for gasification, recover hydrogen from there, In our studies so far in the Indian context, unfortunately, that has not worked very viable. So while we studied many options, it did not work through. What actually the model and our new understanding is suggesting is that we should look for, when we go gasification, we should not really look for a hydrogen recovery. We should actually look into ammonia, methanol, ammonium nitrate, urea. That is the
Yeah.
kind of market which is there in India. And in India, the import of these things is so substantial that it more than justifies. That is why now we are putting up a lot of coal gasification plants where we will convert coal directly to chemicals. We will discuss that in a separate podcast because that is a very important and a large subject. And what we are doing by way of a refinery is to integrate both from the coke side to the gasification and on the product side from whatever we produce in the coal, let's say methanol, which we produce from there, we can integrate that to the refinery in many ways, you know. So that kind of an integration is being looked at, and I will dwell on that in detail in because that is one subject for which a lot of my other friends have also been writing to me. They want to discuss that in detail. So I will dedicate one podcast on that. So that is a very very important subject and relevant for India. Yeah? Because you keep hearing
Excellent.
about that in China and all that. Not much was happening in India, but now I think we have initiated it. So I think the plans are very big. So I will introduce and see how best we get into that. Okay. So let me pick the link from where I left yesterday. So on the MS block, which I was trying to enumerate for the Dream project, we will look at a slightly different kind of a configuration for the CCR and predominantly put an aromatic kind of catalyst in that so that we maximize the BTX component and the raffinates which we get from the reformer. Perhaps we could split into a gasoline cut and a diesel cut. But the important part would be to try and see that whatever we do out there, we were always to keep an eye on the specifications. And that is how it will depend as to what we recover in the BTX complex. But anyway, so that can be done.
Hmm.
So we will intend that. Now, today I will concentrate a little bit on the secondary and the tertiary processing because what I have in mind to propose is a very different kind of a scheme because the intention is to maximize petrochemicals. So the RCO, which is going to come from the crude column, that is the bottom of the crude column. So typically for the crude assays or the crude blends which we use in India, if one were to make a rough assessment, 50% of the products are recovered from the crude distillation itself. That means if I am putting X quantity of crude, roughly X by 2 is what I recover by way of products LPG, naphtha, ATF, kerosene, diesel, etc. from the crude column itself. What comes from the bottom is the reduced crude oil. So in this case,
Yes.
when we are looking at 20 million tons, roughly around 10 million tons, roughly around 10 million tons would be the feedstock to the vacuum distillation unit. Now, in this vacuum distillation unit, the idea would be that this RCO has to be divided into streams by which we can create feedstock for the secondary and the tertiary processing. The intention is that we must lift as much as is possible from this into product streams so that I maximize the distillates or petrochemical feedstock. That is the essential intent. Yeah, actually, it all depends upon how we design the crude column. And one way to look at the crude column design is that we do not try to over recover in the crude column as such and allow a fine cut between diesel and RCO and allow a little bit of slippage of the diesel in a section which slips into the vacuum column. So from the vacuum column, then it is expected that I will get a better distillation because we are working at a lower pressures. So I will get a light diesel cut as a top cut from the vacuum column, The central cut will be your HVGOs and LVGO. We can call it a VGO pool, vacuum gas oil pool. This is essentially a feedstock material for whatever we do in the secondary processing. And what will come from the bottoms of the of the vacuum column is the vacuum residue. So this is the one which will feed the bottom section as such. Yeah, again, just to mention, since we are looking at uh, at a crude mix which is either 50-50 or let's say 30-70 in favor of sweet sour, so you will have a predominant bottoms also. Typically, for broad assessment, one has to do the simulation, but as a broad assessment, one good norm is that whatever goes into the vacuum column, 50% of that comes out as vacuum residue. So in this case, if I'm looking at about 10 million tons of feedstock to the vacuum column, I might have something like 5 million tons coming out at the bottom. And the balance 5 million tons would be distributed somewhat between light diesel, which is maybe 5% or so. Balance is all VGO. So this VGO is the one which is going to be processed in the downstream. Now, as I mentioned, since our intention is to maximize petrochemicals, so there is one configuration which is typical of the refineries, which we also discussed during our last discussion, was that automatically my model takes me to that. And that is that I must hydrotreat this VGO to the extent that I reduce the CCR content of the bottom's hydrotreated product to an extent where I could feed it into a Petro FCC and go for a very high severity FCC so that I can get maximum propylene from here. What we are targeting is something like 20-21% in a typical DCC kind of a unit, or you can also have a high severity FCC. Most of the licensors have that. So one auto route is that the VGO will find way into VGO hydrotreatment, and this is not a very high severity VGO hydrotreatment, roughly maybe about 100 to 110 bar process. And the severity would be to the extent of maybe 10 to 15%. The idea is that I should have the hydrotreated bottoms and I should not cut this VGO into many products. So what will come at the top is you'll get some naphtha, you'll get some LPG, which can find way into petrochemical feedstocks. So because I'm looking at an olefin complex, so most of this stuff we will route to the olefin complex as feedstock. Keep maximizing the olefin plant capacity. And the bottoms, the hydrotreated bottoms will come from VGO that we will push into RFCs, into a Petro FCC, sorry. All along, the intention of secondary and tertiary processing would be to maximize the capacity of Petro FCC and VGO hydrotreater. That means even from the bottoms, we would like to have those cuts which can find way into the Petro FCC through the VGO hydrotreater or directly to, we will discuss that, or directly to Petro FCC. The idea is...
So, Sanjay, I am showing here the yields we obtained from FCC, depending on the configuration and the parameters. So the Petro FCC is the one that maximizes the petrochemicals, the monomers. So typically this is this configuration where we get around 20% propylene out of it.
That's right. So this is the kind of unit which we look at. And interestingly, if you look into that, there is something at the top which you see as a fuel gas. We call it an off gas. And this is very interesting in a Petro FCC. When we are going for 565 degree plus, this off gas is very precious because it has considerable amount of ethylene. Typically, if you do not have a facility for that, it finds way into the fuel gas pool. But if you have an olefin complex, it is a fantastic stream to be integrated to an olefin complex. So these off gases from here we will route to an olefin complex. The olefin complex, I told you, two feedstocks. One is the light naphtha coming from the naphtha section. Then some heavy naphtha, which may not have utilized in the heavy naphtha aromatic block. That heavy naphtha can come here. Then the third feedstock is on the kerosene. On the kerosene, I mentioned yesterday, part of the kerosene, depending on the kind of crude if I'm processing, if I have that C12 to C14 cut, there is a potential to recover LAB, linear alkyl benzene, which can be a good feedstock for the detergent industry. And the balanced kerosene, which is available, has the potential of going to a keromerox to give me ATF as one product, and the balanced heavier kerosene can be upgraded to diesel. I'll tell you how it will be done. And the lighter component of the kerosene could be again a potential feedstock to the olefin complex. So in the secondary processing unit, three major blocks: VGO hydrotreater, a Petro FCC, and an olefin complex. In the olefin complex, we will feed all these things. Whatever surplus LPG is there, straight run LPG, that's fine. All naphthas, light and heavy, some light kerosene. So it is a multi-feed cracker. And as I mentioned yesterday, we'll be targeting a very high capacity. Interestingly, in this cracker, we will interlink all the off gases from the Petro FCCs so that all the ethylene which is there in that off gas can be recovered here. The important part for that would be those off gases have to be treated, because typically in the FCC, these off gases are rich in nitrogen compounds. They have a lot of NOx and all that, which cannot be directly taken into the cold section of the cracker. So what we do is we put an upstream unit, get rid of all the NOx, etc., and hook it up into the demethanizer section of the cracker, where we separate the ethylene and ethane. The ethylene is recovered as a product. So all that which was going as waste is being recovered. In one
Yeah.
plant, we were able to recover 100 KTPA, 100,000 tons per annum of ethylene from here. And the capacity of that FCC was what? Only 2.4. Now, if we are going to maximize the capacity of Petro FCC, that means if I have more VGO feedstock, more the capacity, this is a very potential stream to recover ethylene without too much of an expense, net additional capex. And all the light ends from there, that is ethane and propane, which slip into the off gas system, that can also be cracked into to extinction to get more ethylene, more propylene. So it works out as a very useful kind of a configuration, right? Now, when we are looking at the Petro FCC, one part is very clear that we are interested to have as much propylene as is possible, but discussed a number of 20% or even more, a little bit more than that. The next cut is the light cycle naphthas. This is the one which is actually a very high run material, and it is good good to go directly into the gasoline pool. Now, irrespective of whatever hydro treatment we might have done, the chemistry is such that all the residual sulfur gets locked into the around the gasoline or the naphtha kind of material which comes out from here in these cycle naphthas. So most of this naphtha, before it finds way into the gasoline to gasoline pool, to meet these specifications, there are two important requirements. One is I want to get rid of the sulfur, whatever it might have got locked into this. And the second part is that I must do that without loss of octane. So this technology is preferentially available. The best technology in the world is available with Exxon's, which is a prime G technology. In India, we have a lot of prime G plants. Exxon has a unit which they call as Canfiner. UOP also has a process. But what we use in India mostly is prime G. Prime G is considered to be one of the best technologies. So here, this cycle naphtha goes to the prime G unit, and we get desulfurized cycle naphtha streams. Now, depending upon the specification I have to address for the gasoline, because Aromatics is a very important component to control. And since in the CCR itself we have maximized the aromatics, we will have to be conscious out here. So typically what we do is that most of this cycle naphtha, we actually, in addition to prime G, can consider an extraction unit to recover the aromatics from here. Because benzene and aromatics, there is a specification on gasoline. I cannot have beyond a certain point. But this is a good potential stream to recover the aromatics also. So in some plants, what we have done is a typical GTC kind of a process, an
Yeah.
extraction process where you recover the aromatics from this content and maximize the aromatic pool. Gives you more money out there, and you get a cut which is high and rich in octane, very good on sulfur, and a great blend for the gasoline pool. So this is going to be one of the major streams for the gasoline pool, along with the reformate, which is coming from the CCR. I mentioned the raffinate. I cut it into two cuts: a gasoline cut and a diesel cut. So the lighter ones, which can be maybe lesser in aromatics, free from sulfur, can be blended with this and augment the gasoline pool. So that's something which is going to happen. And so this is the gasoline cut which comes from here. The other part is while high severity FCCs have a distinct advantage in terms of giving you more light ends, that means they give you more propylene, they give you more LPG, they give you more cycle naphthas, which are rich in aromatics, which I can extract and convert it into a good gasoline pool. It will give me a diesel cut also. We call it life cycle oils. Now, these cycle oils, the moment I increase the severity, this cycle oil becomes rich in aromatics. The more the aromatics in this pool, the poorer is the cetane. So, high severity FCCs have one distinct disadvantage. The diesel which comes from this FCC is of extremely poor quality. The cetane number is roughly between 24 to 28, at best could be 30. So this is a very poor quality of diesel which comes from here, and which will require high severity hydrotreatment. So most of this light cycle oil from here is one potential stream to a DHDT unit. So as I explained, in the secondary processing block, I have a VGO hydrotreater, I have a Petro FCC, I have a olefin complex, and in I'll have now an hydrotreater, which is a diesel hydrotreater, which will cater to the LCO for abrasion into the diesel pool. I will have the straight run diesel coming from the atmospheric column and the vacuum column routed to this DHDT, and possibly there will be something else which will come from the bottoms, right? So this will be my feedstock to the DHDT, and we'll see how it is designed and what exactly we do in that. So that is number two. Number three is the olefin complex. Now, if I have to maximize the capacity of the olefin complex, I should keep maximizing the feedstock quantum. That is one. The second part is, as I mentioned, I have to decide as to how I design the olefin plants. It is a highly flexible plant, and it is very important to take a critical decision in very early stages. Those refineries which have a very high severity FCC will already be producing a very high quantum of propylene, right? So there will be a good potential of not producing too much of propylene as an intent from the cracker. So what we have found is that a good severity or P by E ratio is between 0.42 to zero point 0.5. That means whatever is the total feedstock which I am putting into the plant, only maybe 42 to 50% of that I convert into propylene, and I maximize ethylene from here. So if I am looking at a 2 million ton ethylene plant, so I might at best get maybe 1 million tons of propylene from here, or maybe 840, something like that. So P by E ratio could be lesser. There are plants where we have gone up to 0.68. That means 680,000. If I am producing, let's say, 1,000 tons of ethylene, I'm also producing maybe 680,000 tons of propylene. So that kind of a severity also exists out here. But what we will intend in this case is to go for a high severity cracker, to go for an olefin complex in which P by E ratio is between 0.42 to 5.5 million. So that I maximize ethylene from here and I still get a huge quantity of propylene. So this propylene and the propylene coming from Petro FCC will give me my propylene pool. The ethylene which I get from here as well as the ethylene which I recover from the PFCC of gases, that total ethylene pool would be available for the downstream units.
Yeah, here I am showing the cracking yield in the steam cracker depending on the feedstock. So you
That's
say
right.
we would be propylene ethylene ratio.
Yeah.
We would
So
be
you will see one of the
area.
major feedstock, roughly around, you see, 70% of it would be naphtha. Naphtha kind of material, light naphtha, heavy naphtha, and light kerosene. So we will be mostly following this product pattern. So if you look the ethylene out here, you will find it's close to maybe 33% or so total ethylene.
Mm-hmm.
That is the kind of recovery which we get from here. And you'll find the propylene is roughly maybe 11, 12, at best 16% is what we've been able to hit in the plants when naphtha is the feedstock. But if I'm going for a combination, when I push in a lot more LPG in the plant, ethane and propane, you'll find the ethylene goes up. So if I get ethane, I am able to hit very high, 70, 80%. If I'm able to get propane, maybe around 40% or so, very high ethylene. So my intention all along would be, even for Petro FCC of gases, to bring the ethanes into the plant. Now, if in a Petro FCC, incidentally, what happens is the LPG content, which gives me a lot of propylene, it gives me considerable amount of propane also as a bottom product. All that propane from there, I will route into this olefin complex. Can you come back to your conversion, which you were showing just now?
Yeah, of course.
Just put it up. There's something interesting I'll show. So if you look at the propane, you're getting 42% conversion there, right? 42% conversion into ethylene.
Yes.
And about 16-17% you're getting propylene. So all the propanes from Petro FCC, I will route into this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we have the potential of that straight run LPG which I was getting from the crude column, I can split that into ethane and propane also, propane and butane also, and bring that also out here and crack into the cracker. So as LPG becomes available as a feedstock, the cracker begins to look different. I keep changing the mix of the cracker, bring more lighters into it, and improve its efficiency. So in India, we are going to have mostly crackers like this, but since LPG is not straight available because it has to be utilized as a cooking fuel, so what I will do from the Petro FCC, I will recover propylene as a product. I will take the propane from there, bring it to the cracker, and let the LPG, the cracked LPG, be only the C4 material. So C4 will have both saturates and unsaturated material. That component will form the LPG pool. Route that to LPG, right? So this is the other feedstock. The third I mentioned LCO, that will go to your DHDT along with the straight run diesel material. Now cracker is something which I wanted to dwell on. So as I was mentioning, we will produce lots of ethylene from here with a target number in mind. The upper limit should be 2 million tons. So we will try to maximize as much as possible. I'll get propylene from here. The next cut is C4 mix. Now, since in India we don't have feedstock, we don't have too much of lighter feedstock. Typically, what we do is we take this C4 mix, hydrotreat it, saturate it completely, and recycle it into cracker.
You mean the C4 mix coming from the cracker?
Yes, from the cracker. This C4 mix is actually rich in a lot of butadienes and things like that. So
Yeah.
those plants where butadiene is an objective function, then we can recover the butadiene from here as a product. Now,
Yeah.
butadiene in itself is not a simple material to handle because it requires quick processing. I can't store it too much because of an oligomerization problem. So in India, because my intention is to maximize ethylene and propylene, there are very few units where we actually recover butadiene from C4 mix. We typically hydrotreat and recycle. That's one potential stream. The other potential is to use a Superflex process out here. This is one technology which we have studied in detail. Unfortunately, why it did not get popularized in India? Because there is only one licensor for this, and that is KBR. Only KBR licenses this process, and their first plant was in Sasol in South Africa, and later on they have put some plants in Korea also. We examined this in India.
Superflex, you say?
Yeah, Superflex. Superflex now I think they've changed the name of the
The name?
technology. I think now they're calling it Catofen. No, not Catofen, something else.
Ah, you mean propane
PDH.
dehydrogenation?
No. Catofen is PDH unit of ABB Lamas. It is
Okay.
Superflex. Earlier on, they used to call it Superflex. I don't know. Now they are licensing it by some other name. Maybe we can. I will also hunt into that and let you know later on. But that
They
technology.
they have K-Pro, which is a propane dehydrogenation.
No. I'm not mentioning that. K-Pro is
Okay.
not there. It is a KBR process.
Yeah.
KBR, you can look at Superflex. If you have something.
Doing what? It's a process doing what?
It takes the C4 mix as a feedstock and converts that into ethylene, propylene, and aromatics. Okay, don't worry. I will find out maybe now they are licensing it by some other name. When we studied it, it was Supercross or something. Or maybe I'm using the wrong name. I don't know, maybe. This is the plant which they have in Sasol. Do you have the Sasol configuration here?
I'm not sure if I have to investigate. Yes, I can check. But yeah, continue
Okay,
talking
no,
because
don't worry.
it takes time to.
So
Yeah.
this C4 mix, actually I can use in one of the, let me just call it for a moment KBR process and convert it into, this is one potential which I can do. The other potential is, since I have got rid of the CCR, which was to make gasoline, this C4 mix can be a good feedstock to the alkylation block. Because even in the Petro FCC, I will have a C4 and C5 cut unsaturated material, which is very good feedstock for alkylation. And alkylation is a premium product because in all future refineries, it would be always good to have an alkylation unit wherein I maximize the alkylate production, which finds way into the gasoline pool. It gives me better pricing. So C4 mix will have the three options. I can use a KBR process to convert into ethylene, propylene, and aromatics. That is my intention, to maximize the petrochemicals. That's one. The other option could be part of it I could take into the alkylation unit, make the alkylates and blend it into the gasoline pool to make premium gasoline. And the third option would be I can hydrotreat this particular C4 mix and recycle it back into cracker to maximize ethylene and propylene. That is the third alternative. Typically, that is what is done in India. In most of the plants, we do that because we don't require butadiene as a product. It's not that we don't require, but butadiene linked technologies is a little bit of an issue. Because when we talk of SBR, latex, all those kinds of technologies, we find that most of those technologies, it's very difficult to get license and they are difficult processes. Anyway, there is a different problem linked with it. We can discuss it separately. But right now, my intention is to see to it as to how best I maximize petrochemicals. So this is the three things which I can do on the C4 mix. Now the bottoms of the cracker, because the liquid feedstock is very high, I'll have a lot of rich back end from the cracker. And the quantum would also be quite significant. I can hydrotreat this material. And after hydrogenation, I'll get a C5 cut from here, which is saturated material. That will be recycled back to cracker. But balanced material is very interesting. I have benzene, toluene, xylenes in that. Now, I have gone for a process to put a cracker only. Normally, this PX unit, if I put a standalone cracker, I don't have an aromatic complex. It is not justified to put an aromatic complex to recover this. I only recover benzene, toluene at best, and allow everything else to go into the mixed xylene pool, sell it as merchant product. But if I have an aromatic complex sitting in my MS block up there, all this material from here will go into that complex where I will recover all the benzene, convert the toluenes, isomerize it, maximize xylene from there, and I get a huge xylene cut. Quite a bit of it. This improves the economics of the xylene plant tremendously. So every back-end integration from a liquid cracker into an aromatic complex improves the returns of the complex dramatically. So now I have not spent money to reform something. It has happened out of a cracking process. Only thing which I have done is I have recovered all this material in the CCR linked downstream block for BTX complex. So this is the horizontal integration which we will do up there, and have the cracker and the aromatics plant linked, have the Petro FCC and the cracker linked, both in the off gases on the propane, and recover, maximize ethylene, propylene, have the C4 mix in case I can put a KBR unit to maximize ethylene, propylene, and aromatics, fine. If I cannot do that, I will hydrotreat and recycle, or I will route part of this material into alkylation block, maximize the alkylate along with the feedstock from FCC as well as some straight run material from CDU, have the alkylate blended with the gasoline pool, where I have a lot of high raw material coming from Petro FCC. I have some raffinate coming from the aromatic complex. So my gasoline also will be very good. And you will notice I'm not putting in money actually to make gasoline. It is coming incidentally. So we are only blending. So my capex is less, returns are very high. So to that extent, we are heading for a good economics in the plant. So this is what we will try to do in the secondary processing block as such.
Okay,
Now,
so I brought up here the KBR technologies that we have already recorded in the platform. And the one you mentioned is the K-COT. It's KBR.
K-COT is yes, this is
no K-COT. Score, sorry.
No, I mentioned it is K-COT only.
K-COT is the FCC. K-COT is
yes,
FCC.
It is an FCC kind of process, but the feedstock to that is a C4 mix, unhydrotreated material, which is coming from an olefin complex, and it gives me maybe about 25 to 30% of propylene. It gives me about 25% of ethylene, and it gives me a good aromatic complex. Since my intention is to maximize aromatics as well as ethylene and propylene, I like to prefer to put this unit out there and have the alkylation unit rationalized only on FCC as well as straight run feedstock, which makes sense. It gives me good economics. Only problem is that during implementation, KBR is not very easy to deal with. That is what we found. And in India, why this technology did not come is because in India, we have a very important criteria for licensing. We do not like hardware. We do not like any licensor to supply us hardware. We don't like that. Hardware has to be made in India. So any licensor which says and uses the word proprietary supply, proprietary this, proprietary that, that technology is very hard to come here. We do not like proprietary items because we don't like dependence on any licensors.
Yeah.
We want complete independence on fabrication. Only thing we want to depend on the licensors is on basic technology in terms of catalyst, configuration, basic engineering. Everything else we want to do in India and seek support only for supervision. Now, KBR was coming with a lot of conditions. They were saying the furnace is mine, The reactor regenerator internals are all mine. In fact, they were saying that regenerator has to be supplied by us. Forget about it. That technology will not come. So that's why it did not take off in India. But maybe down the line, when we are looking into a futuristic scenario, there could be a good case to look into this aspect also. So this is what I would be sitting in the secondary processing. Now from the tertiary processing, that means when I look at the VR, vacuum residue on its own will be generating very little end product. It only generates, I mean, substantially generates feedstock for the secondary processing. It could generate some distillates also. We will see how it does. But there is a potential for it to generate some feedstock for the secondary processing. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, we have tried to phase out cokers a little bit. But coker we still find is a very interesting process. Our configurations suggest that while we can rationalize the capacity of the coker downwards, it is very important to have a coker. Why? Because you see, if you look into the Petro FCC also, below the diesel cut, that is the LCO which comes from FCC, I will have this cycle oil, decanted oil or a fuel oil kind of cut that is very much rich in CBFS and things like that. That item is very difficult to even pull into the fuel oil. We find it as a very good feedstock to go to coker. So one feedstock would be the cycle oil, the light cycle oils or the fuel oil, which I recover from FCC as a residual product. It is maybe 5 to 6% of the feedstock to the coker, to the FCC. That is one good feed stream which can form a feedstock to the coker. The other good feedstock is that if I'm going to put a resid hydrocracker, I cannot have 100% conversion. I can at best the normal technologies which are there by KBR or maybe LC Max by ABB or maybe IFP process evaluated or even UOP has a process. Most of these guys are coming around 90 to 92% conversion. So there is a distinct amount of pitch from here which needs to be disposed. This pitch is a very good feedstock for coker. So one is the FCC fuel oil, the pitch from the slurry hydrocracker, and there is a third waste stream in the refinery. When you look at a wastewater treatment plant which sits in the offsites, there is a lot of sludge, solid sludge, which comes from there. After the treatment of water, it has gone through the process. You will find all refineries generate a lot of sludge. How to dispose this sludge is a very big challenge in refineries. We found that coker is a very good outlet for it. So this sludge from the wastewater treatment plant is a very good potential stream to go to a coker. So that is the third stream. So I can get rid of all my waste sludge from here. So FCC bottoms, I could have the pitch coming from a slurry hydrocracker, and I would have the sludge coming from wastewater treatment plant in addition to vacuum residue. So all the vacuum residue which comes from there, part of it can go to coker. I want to restrict the coker to 2.4 million tons. 2.4 million tons, it gives me two chamber design. I don't have to make it too complex. We don't want to have too much of coke. So 2.4 million tons of coker. And as I told you, if I'm looking at roughly 20 million ton refinery on the atmospheric column, roughly what I will get as vacuum residue would be 5.5, something of that sort. 5 million tons at the bottom vacuum residue. So let's say 2 million ton odd goes to the coker. About 3 million tons I could put a slurry hydrocracker. So the bottoms will look like a slurry hydrocracker and a coker combination. Now what these units do is, the coker will give me 70% distillate, of which about 50% is product. But 20% of that, which we call as a heavy coker gas oil, it is a VGO kind of material. That material can find way into the VGO hydrotreater, sitting at the top in the secondary processing. So an HCGO stream from coker is one additional feed stream which will go to VGO hydrotreater. So what will happen? VGO hydrotreater capacity will go up. Correspondingly, Petro FCC capacity will go up. So I will get more propylene, I will get more off gases, I will get more gasoline, I will get more diesel, I'll get a little bit more fuel oil. That's another issue, but that's the way it is. So I will maximize the capacity of Petro FCC. That is number one. When I go for a slurry hydrocracker, let's say a 3 million ton slurry hydrocracker, I have to debate whether I have to put over there the hydrocracker part of the unit or not. So I will have on the front end the batch process by which I convert the resid into potential feedstock. I can have an SGA unit sitting in that for recycling the material to give me maximum conversion. And I could also have a conversion unit sitting in the unit as such. That conversion unit gives me what? It gives me very good distillates. It gives me LPG, it gives me naphtha, it gives me lots of diesel, and it gives me VGO. Now, this VGO, either I hydrocrack within the plant, so I have to put a facility for that, I have to put reactors and crack it, or this hydrotreated VGO I can take directly to Petro FCC, either through VGO hydrotreater, or if the deep hydrotreatment is done within the unit itself, I will have this VGO going to Petro FCC, and that is what we would prefer to do. That way, what we would have done is this is about 30%. So roughly about 1 million tons of VGO will come from here, which is a huge quantity. This quantity we upgraded in Petro FCC will give me 20% of that as propylene, straight away 220,000 tons, maybe 10,000 tons of propane. And so many other products will come from it. The idea would be to maximize the capacity of Petro FCC, have it cost linked with olefin plant, have the bottom simplified with a coker VGO hydrotreater combination. Don't invest too much in a VGO hydrocracker as such, but yes, we have to put the right sort of hydroprocessing facility. This plant is actually very big, so anyway, this plant will be put. But the VGO, instead of being completely processed out there, we could also look into the feasibility of connecting it out there. Now, India also requires a lot of lubes. We have very little lube capacity in the country. For high conversion slurry hydrocracking, we can also consider to make some lubes from here, type 2 and type 3. But it depends. I mean, that can be done only if the crude quality is of the right sort. We have the right sort of bottoms, and then we'll have to put a right sort of hydrocracker to get the appropriate distillate. But that is one more potential which can be explored. It can be explored even as a revamp because those capacities are normally not very big. So this is the way we will be interlinking the bottoms upgradation of HCGO and VGO to the secondary processing block. All the distillates which come from coker, like say I get a lot of coker diesel, this diesel can go into the DHDT for upgradation. I'll get coker naphtha and coker LPG. Coker LPG is a very important product. So coker LPG can go upstream. I can hydrotreat it because it has a lot of sulfur. I can hydrotreat it, can make way into the olefin complex as a good feedstock. And the off gases which come from DCU, incidentally, are extremely rich in ethane. So as I told you, the FCC of gases which are doing the treatment to recover the ethylene from there, this stream has a lot of ethane. This stream can also be treated after doing some amine treatment here, remove all the sulfur and knock this stream or combine this stream with the FCC of gases and push it into the treatment section to remove all the NOx, etc., and then recover the ethanes from there in the olefin complex and have the all ethanes recycled for cracking to extinction. So I have automatically generated ethane as a feedstock, propane as a feedstock, LPG as a feedstock, light naphtha as a feedstock, heavy naphtha as a feedstock, light kerosene as a feedstock to the olefin complex. My olefin plant is very versatile. Now I will maximize ethylene from here, produce a lot of propylene from here, handle the C4 mix in a KBR kind of a unit, K-COT kind of a unit, produce ethylene, propylene, and aromatics from there, interlink all these plants, maximize the aromatic recovery, and target something like what? Maybe 1.5 million tons of xylene, maybe about 1.2 million tons of benzene. I'll target about 2 million tons of ethylene, roughly 2 million tons of propylene. So downstream units can come accordingly for that. And then of course, alongside we'll have some coke as a product, lots of sulfur as a product. Instead of producing sulfur, we can actually produce sulfuric acid. There is no need to produce sulfur. So all the acid gases which come from the refinery, instead of actually using the supercross and cross process to convert them into sulfur, elemental sulfur, what we have done in some of the plants is to directly convert it through the WSA process of hollow topsoil into sulfuric acid. And this sulfuric acid can find way. One is that sulfuric acid is a positive IRR. It gives me a lot of incremental IRR, whereas the sulfur plant is actually negative to the refinery because it doesn't give me anything. Sulfur price is nothing. I have to put it because of environmental considerations. But sulfuric acid generates a lot of steam. So that integration helps. And the sulfuric acid, even at zero price, shows great economics for the refinery. And the sulfuric acid, maybe in the next phase when we will discuss the second part of these model refinery config, we can look into phosphoric acid plant, something else, or it can be sent to an ammonia urea facility to make DAP and things like that. So sulfuric acid could be another potential stream which could be there. Now, in terms of the auxiliary unit, one thing which I wanted to mention, there is a considerable amount of hydrotreatment you would have noticed. We have a significant video hydrotreater, we have a slurry hydrocracker, and we have a diesel hydrotreater. Now, because of the deep aromatics cut, the deep aromatics reforming which we have in the MS block, there is a lot of surplus hydrogen which is generated from there. So the aromatic complex will be exporting hydrogen actually to the refinery. The cracker also produces a lot of hydrogen, which will also come to the refinery. So I'll have two major sources of hydrogen in the refinery itself. The third source, of course, would be the hydrogen plant. So I will use the natural gas, go for the SMR process, and produce whatever is the deficit hydrogen which is required for the complex. And to my mind, the requirement would be roughly, maybe total requirement could be to the tune of 175 to 200,000 tons per annum of hydrogen may be required for this kind of configuration, of which to my mind 30 to 40,000 would be sourced internally from the refinery processing itself. So about 150,000 odd is what we will have to create as a capacity out here. Now imagine if this capacity was to be able to use naphtha for this, I require roughly 2.5 to 3 tons of naphtha per ton of hydrogen. So if I require 150, maybe 500,000 tons of naphtha is required, which is now saved, which is going to cracker to give me ethylene and propylene. And I have got LNG as a product or natural gas as a product to give me hydrogen. So this is one part. The second part is most of these refineries now get constrained because of what we do with the steam and power. Because all these complexes are large, the refinery per se, to our mind, does not require too much of power. Actually, what even with this complex, maybe 100, 150 megawatt. But the moment I give it a petrochemical orientation, the power requirement shoots off asymptotically because all the downstream units, particularly the polymers, etc., they are all power guzzlers. I require tremendous amount of power in all those units. So I think roughly what we would require is between 450 to 500 megawatt of power and roughly maybe 1,500 to 2,000 tons, could be even more, but it will be 2,500 tons of steam for this kind of a complex. Yeah, there's a lot of steam which can be produced within the process at various levels, which will be captively consumed. Because FCC produces a lot of steam. Steam cracker is almost self-sufficient; it generates its own steam. So that's one part. But in addition to that, there is a lot of steam which would be required. So what we do is all the petcoke which is produced from the coker, that is an ideal feedstock for CVFE. It gives me bottom of the barrel. Because when I sell this coke, actually I don't earn too much of money. 10,000 rupees a ton doesn't cost you much. It can actually go to a coal gasifier, blend with coal on the front end to reduce the ash content. So that's one potential. It can go to the cement kilns, but what I get is I don't get much money out of this. It's much better to utilize it to produce captive steam. One good way would be that the coker, in fact, that is one another way as to why we decide the coker capacity to what it might be. All the coke which is from there can go to a CFBC kind of a boiler where I produce only steam. Only steam means I produce steam. I produce steam at a very high pressure and allow it to go through the steam turbines to generate a lot of, let's say, I can generate steam at 175 bar to get the best possible efficiency, and then allow to go to a multi-stage turbines in the power plant to extract at, let's say, maybe 105 kg, 40 kg, 18 kg, and link the process steam to the refinery as such. And balance steam I could condense. This gives me a very good efficiency. And roughly what, maybe 20 to 25% of the power of the plant could be sourced internally. Could be sourced internally, right? So,
So
that
this power plant will be outer battery limit, OBL, like
it depends. When we will discuss the execution part of it, we will discuss whether this can be a BOO facility. Somebody else can come and set it up, utilize the petcoke as a feedstock, and give you steam in return. That can be one way of doing it. Or the refiner himself might like to do it. Because you see, captive power plant and steam is so integral to the process that it is very difficult to hive out this complete facility. At least that we don't do that in India, because the operator doesn't feel comfortable unless he exercises control on steam, because steam is required at various levels in the refinery, and the operator needs to feel comfortable. And if the operator doesn't have control on steam, so it can affect its processing. So if I go through a BOO contract, maybe at a certain level, maybe 105 kg steam, I can understand. That is to serve a limited purpose. But process steam, normally one would prefer to generate on their own only. But yes, there are plants where we have seen the whole facility being implemented on BOO basis, where the feedstock has been supplied by the owner and they have got steam in return, which can cater to the requirements. It depends upon how we define the complex. But what can be done is the for the power part, power part now the grids are extremely reliable in India. So I think most of the complexes are becoming more confident. So they are not putting the gas-based power plant, because you see otherwise, once I have LNG, the other scheme is to put a combined cycle power plant, generate power and steam from there. But our own analysis is that it hurts my IRR tremendously, because if I look at the price of the power, if I get it from the coal-based grid, it is roughly 4 rupees a kilowatt. If I generate the power on my own through the fossil fuels, my power cost is between 10 rupees to 12 rupees a unit, a kilowatt. So it's three times. So I waste money. So I have burnt hydrocarbons. I wasted money there, and I've got power which is expensive, very expensive. So it pulls down my refinery or my project IRR. And my requirements are fantastic actually. I'm looking at 500 megawatt and 2000 tons of steam. It is one hell of a lot of big facility. So it's better to take power which is grid driven. So now in India, we have most of the grids which are coal-based grids, which gives you a maximum backup power. Now in the last 3 4 years, the renewable grids have picked up. So I am getting tremendous amount of renewable energy. The price is much less at what, 2 rupees a unit, even half the price of the coal grid. The only problem with that is I need to have commensurate battery system so that it can be available 24 by 7. But yes, gradually it is happening. In the next session, we will discuss how best we can integrate this thing optimally. But potential is there. So the other part is I do that because my intention is we don't want to use hydrocarbons or fossil fuels to generate power. It is very expensive. It hurts the complex. As I was telling you in the previous two sessions, 6 to 8% of my crude actually translates into generating steam and power. Let's waste it. Because I can convert it into distillate products and make money if I have power to come from outside. That's what you do in West and USA and things like that, where you have strong grids and you pull power from elsewhere, pull your maybe other utilities also centrally from some pool. In India, we don't do that. Each complex is self-sufficient on its own. So I put so much of capex, I put so much of power, so much of steam, so much of money into the complex because we are very scared. I cannot find anything reliable. But now things are changing. There are lots of refineries which have switched over to grid power. I'm not saying fully, but a typical good norm in India is 40% captive power generation, balance 60% you take from the grid. That is for power. Steam, I have no option. But now for steam, there is one interesting option which is developing in the country, and that is the small SMR nuclear based power plants. Now, they cannot come immediately in the vicinity of this thing, but they can come in not too far away from the plant. That is about 200, 300 megawatt. They can be implemented fast. They can be synchronized with the completion of the plant. And that is something which can give me both power and steam. And the operating cost is nothing. Only capex is there. So capex is maybe what, 5 6 times the normal capex of a captive power plant. I understand that. But in terms of OPEX, it is nothing. And if you know, when we do the plant's financial analysis, actually capex does not hurt the plant IRR or anything. It doesn't hurt it
Mm.
much. It is inflexible to capex. But
So you even have this floating power plants, so nuclear SMR on a barge.
They are under consideration
y-
now. So we are
yeah.
planning to go from 6.6 gigawatt to 100 gigawatt. So a
Mhm.
combination of large nuclear power plants, small nuclear power plants, and SMRs, plenty of them across India, are being considered. So in the next 5 to 10 years' time, we will see a flurry of these plants coming up. So we will have an horizontal opportunity to integrate all these plants, or really some of these plants, with the prospective hydrocarbon installations also. Power cost is nothing. It will be what, less than a rupee. So it will be nothing.
An SMR
So
is a proven concept for
yes,
a
yes. I think
refinery.
now USA, France, all of them are offering that. India is in the process of doing its own R&D. We have some breakthrough in the frost breeder technology. We are looking at our own SMR plants, 200 to 300 megawatt variety. So all knows, who knows, we might have our own nuclear technology to set up these plants. Or if not, at least we will get something from France. US, I can't be sure, but France, yes. China has, but we don't take anything Chinese. We don't take Chinese technology. We buy some of their stuff, but no technology. We don't want to be dependent on them. But yes, Japan is good. Japan is strong. They haven't really done SMR so far, but France it seems has done it. So at least there are some announced projects, and they it seems have the technology. So we will definitely have some of those. So in a nutshell, we are looking at a 20 million ton integrated complex. In the next this thing, we can discuss the downstream downstream complex as to what I do with ethylene, propylene, benzene, aromatics. So you can have a good whole lot of big downstream units. But predominantly what 60-70% will goes into polymers. I can look at MAG, POPG, we can look into LDP, EVA. VCM PVC is a
Yeah.
very preferred downstream unit in India because infrastructure growth is very high, demand is extremely strong. VCM PVC is a very good important potential. But all these units, as I mentioned, are highly power intensive. So one needs to secure the plants this way. So what we discussed today was maybe a 20 million ton refinery, a corresponding vacuum column. At the bottoms, we still are looking at a slurry hydrocracker and a coker combination. In the secondary processing, we are looking at a VGO hydrotreater and a Petro FCC along with a PRU and a corresponding polypropylene complex. And the cycle oils are going to be upgraded in the DHDT, wherein all diesel of the refinery can get upgraded. The naphtha cracker would look very complex because we will feed it multiple feedstocks. We will bring in LPG, light naphtha, heavy naphtha, kerosene, light kerosene, recycled streams from off gases from Petro FCC, off gases from DCU, crack the ethane and propane to recycle it to extinction, maximize ethylene and propylene from there. And on the C4 mix, we can look at K-COT in case there is no problem with respect to sourcing the technology. So that can be a good potential. We can get rid of the hydrogenation part. And then look at an LNG terminal to interlink the LNG integration to the refinery. At best, if worst come worst, to supplement the power and steam requirements, we might put at best one or two gas turbines, frame 6 type, just to give you flexibility in such a big plant. And 50-60 megawatt of power could be produced correspondingly with what 200-250 tons of steam, which could be hooked up into the central grid and integrated in the complex. And this is how we can have pools of gasoline, diesel rationalized. And DHDT is another important area. Currently, we have discussed only diesel hydrotreater to upgrade the cetane numbers to ensure that I meet the diesel specifications to Euro 6 levels. So obviously, we are looking at a high pressure unit. But what we can do is we can put in some cracking catalyst in that and try and crack some diesel because I want to rationalize the diesel in the longer run. So we can crack this diesel, 25 to 30% of the diesel could be cracked. Only thing that we will do when green hydrogen becomes attractive. Because currently LNG I have to source from outside, it is expensive. Generating hydrogen and then utilizing it to crack diesel on an expensive route, possibly one will have to look at the economics. But it does make sense sometimes. I can crack diesel to rationalize the diesel and the light ends which I get from there. Either I can maximize gasoline and gasoline pool, or I can route it to the cracker and maximize ethylene and propylene. So the DHDT configuration when we make, we can keep the future in mind and design the reactors accordingly so that there is bed space available to push in some cracking catalyst later on, depending upon when the plant is set up. So this is there. On the downstream side, I think yeah, for the benzene, one good potential product in India is to look at phenol. Uh, uh, we can look at phenol. Cumin phenol is a good unit. We have still not put any bisphenol unit, although it's a potential product, but there is potential to look into that also. So that's one chain one can look into. We already have a acrylates facility in India, but there is space for one more. So for the total propylene which we are getting, apart from polypropylene, one potential product, maybe 250 to 300,000 tons of propylene we can dedicate to an acrylate complex, right? On the oxygen side, we can have MEG and POPG. They are all very potential products which are required on the downstream side. On the polymers, still the demand is very strong. We can continue to have many trains of polypropylene. We want a lot of swing unit. We want a lot of HDP. So polymers find their space into the complex on their own. We would also like to have some more LDPE capacity in India, LDPE and EVA, and we want a lot of VCM PVC, maybe two trains of 300 KTA kind of stuff. So that is what we can have on the downstream side. So if you have a complex of this nature, you are looking at a very huge facility.
We also have to look at the outside battery limit installations, the ancillary installations, the peripherals like water treatment, environmental technologies, water treatment
Yes.
station that we have also to place in the
Yeah,
complex.
it starts from big desalination plants, because that's why we are near to the port.
Yeah,
We will have to put a massive desalination unit to get water. Then we have a complete water block coupled with the steam and the power generation facility. That's one. Then you will have
Do
your
we
own
consider
air separation plant so that you can get off.
air separation? Yeah. Do we consider all this is part of the dream project, or it is our separate entities?
Yeah, it is also. See, if I have to consider a plant in India, it is very difficult to assume that this will not be an integral part of the complex. So in India, I will later on when we'll go to the costs, I'll tell you about 30 to 35% of our investment in refineries and petrochemicals is toward the offsites. So I have to put
Offsites.
massive utilities of my own, right from water, steam, power, air, nitrogen, treatment, recycling, everything. So that's one. Then on the product side, I have to have lots of crude storage for blending. Then I have to have lots of product storage. Then I have to have railway gantries. I have to have tanker gantries. I have to have pump stations which can, through the pipelines, link it to the central grid. So there is a lot of investment which happens on the offsites also. But what is happening of now, of late, is there is a large part of those activities which can possibly be put on BOO basis. That means I can have players operating out here and they can set up the facilities. I can cordon some area for them and I can enter into a contract that I give them A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
and they give me X, Y, Z. So that can also happen. It is already started happening. So we have started doing it for hydrogen plant. We start doing it for air separation plant. We have started doing it for wastewater treatment plant. Still, the water block and the steam and power, we don't hive out. On the product storage, yes, crude terminals, product terminals, those have gone on this thing on BOO basis. But the central areas where you have to do the product evacuation, and I have my controls and product evacuation, railway gantries, truck gantries, pipeline terminals, those we put on our own. Well, I need commercial control, no? So those are
Yeah.
put by the owner only. So owner puts all the process units, this part of facility, part of it. Then we will discuss the implementation part of it. Then so what I will do is, because I think I have told a configuration which is quite complex, I will make a sketch for it and send you,
Yeah.
in which
Yeah.
I will join all these things into one central facility. And on that particular complex, in the next sitting, we will discuss CCS, energy, green ammonia, green hydrogen, and see how best to optimize that as a concept. Then on that itself, we will develop the implementation plan, how I should implement this complex, in which we can discuss all these things, all these models, what should be on BOO, what should be on. Then I will work out the capex for you.
Very good.
You don't have to go to anyone. One man is enough. I will do the capex for you, so you will get an idea as to what it should cost. Right? Cost in various kinds of methodologies. What mode of implementation? If I use EPCM or a combination, what does it cost? If I do this, do that, how much? So all those things which I do typically in a plant, we can do that. Yeah, to get to an order of magnitude idea. So it will sink in. So your audience will possibly also feel interested, because a lot of people are interested to know, while it is we have conceived a plant, how do you build it? Plus, it's not only this, there is a lot of infrastructure which you have to build around the plant. I have to build jetties, I have to build platforms, I have to build SPMs. Then I have to build a non-plant area, I have to build storage yards, I have to build a construction area, how to set up the plant, assembly areas, crane haulage, so many things are there. So plant building is not easy. But we will, when we discuss the implementation plan, I'll give you insights as to how we do it in India for large complexes, which I think will be very useful information. And on that, we can keep developing it further and have few more sessions which can be very interesting. Once we have gone through the whole junket of all these things, my suggestion would be then you open up to the audience and have one or two sessions only on Q&A. Let them ask anything on configuration, on implementation, on estimation, on planning, on anything. And those sessions will become very interesting, hopefully.
And
Yeah.
Sanjay, I mean, this is wonderful. And what we can do in the system, we can do all these different scenarios. We can do a capacity scenario, and then we can
Yes,
do a future utilization or outlook scenarios. So where we
right.
can say, how is the asset starting up? At what rates will it be running the individual plants? We can load in our system price sets. So we can do a dynamic margin calculation going forward. And as you
Yes.
described, we want to invite the audience, but we can go even further. We can make this collaborative and invite people to do their own calculations. So if we provide CapEx numbers, we can say, who's got the best view on what is the future IRRs going to be? Is the project viable in this? So let's get our configuration set up and open it up to people to ask the questions, as you say, and also go about it and come up with their own ideas and with their own challenges. So we would be happy to receive challenges to
Because
see if it's viable.
ideas and challenges are welcome. But if we are going to share the knowledge in terms of a material balance development on a configuration or a corresponding cost estimation know-how, that is proprietary information. So between the three of us, it's fine. But if it goes to the market and somebody is giving access to the handle, it better come with a price
No, that's
because
fine. We can deal with this. That we will talk about, is this public information? So if it's not
yeah,
public,
yeah,
we don't want to share this one. We can
that's
talk
right.
with about indicators and rough numbers, but we can take a good view. I mean, a lot of information is publicly available, and we have in our community a lot of people with expertise on future pricing. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can, and that's everybody's guess. I mean, a lot of people have guess,
See,
and we're not using
I'll, I'll
data
share a
which
good
is
secret. I'll share a good
protected.
secret with you. I'll share a good secret with you. Some 15 years ago, I developed a software that you had to only tell me the crude API and the gas and the quantum. I put it in my laptop and turned the face of the laptop in front of you. It will give you everything, anything which you want in the world. It will give you. It will give you capacities of units, costs of units, number of drawings, quantum of work, blah blah blah. Technology is available, anything and everything which you can dream of. I remember we could pull out 138 options at the
Yes.
stroke and a click of a button. Now, boss, that is know-how. Huh? On day one, I'm sitting with a licensor and I tell him, boss, whatever you are talking, I don't agree with you. I remember one discussion we were having with ABB Lamas. He came out with his own material balance. We cross-checked it across the way. I didn't tell him anything. I just showed him the laptop. I told him, boss, I don't agree with your numbers. Our number is telling us something else. They went
And
back.
that's what
They
we should invite people
confirmed.
to participate in that discussion, because we worked in the industry. We've seen these models and these assumptions in projects, and then we look at the project 5 years later and we evaluate and do the comparison, and we see what has actually become true. Neither
Yeah,
the
yeah.
prices, nor the demand, nor the run rates all had to be adjusted in the course of a project or in the reality, coming to very different results. So I'm looking forward to have a discussion with the community out there on the views, that if they agree with a number that's in the system, or if we jointly come up with a different view on it. So I'm really looking forward now to get the configuration.
One important feedback I'll give you. One feedback I will give you. One important feedback
configurations, and then we can take it forward from there.
Okay, good. But one important feedback I'll give you. See, on various projects of large size, including the one which you keep mentioning in Africa, we did the capex in the very initial stage. That means when we configured the plant, while the licensor developed the basic engineering packages, we gave a plus or minus 10% cost estimate. Would you believe it? I have myself handled more than 20 projects, large size projects, each one of them $2 or $3 billion. Not one project we have gone beyond our cost estimate. Never. We have slipped on the schedule. I agree with you. On the schedule, we have not been very good. We have slipped 3 months, 6 months.
Okay.
That kind of a slippage has been there. But on costs, we haven't really gone wrong, because but the problem is in Indian market, no, we have a good sense of the Indian market. Everything is available domestically. If you ask me to build a plant elsewhere, no, we go a little bit wrong there. I'll tell you why. Because we found that the construction costs which are there elsewhere in the world are vastly at variance with India. Vastly. Boss, the difference is as high as 3 times. You can't believe it, but it is that way. When I build my plants in India, it is nothing. Labor is very cheap. My contracting costs are very, very low as compared to what I see out. You look at an EPC cost, we laugh at those costs in India. I say, it's too high. It's too high for us. We can't believe it, because we have built those plants. So all these big guys, when they come and play the game with us in India, they are not successful here. Because we build the plant at a very low cost, and we rarely go wrong on that. I'm not saying nothing is foolproof in this world. I can't say that everything we have been on dot. But by and large, 90%, 95% of the time, if you are hitting on dot, that means your estimation is not very good. And your estimation is good because you know that indigenously I can source all this stuff. But if my foreign dependence is so high, everything I have to go out, people will extort. I go to single vendor, people will show proprietary items. Well, I go to mandated vendors. They will charge anything, no. So that kind of a thing we don't allow, no. So as long as we can maintain good control on that, boss, capex can be controlled. You see, even in the African refinery, nobody knows what is the right cost. Once on a telephone call, I will tell you, between you and me, what was our number. What you read in the market, what you see in the paper, it is not that number. The number is something else. So I will tell you what that number is. And there is no deviation from that number. That is the beauty of it. And it was in a place which is other than India. It is a certain factor for construction, and we guessed it. But we guessed it correctly.
But that's what we will do. And that is the beauty of doing this project in a location. That we're not just building a virtual project somewhere. We're doing it in India, where we can learn from you and from others what are the challenges in India and how do they apply to our project.
Yes, surely. No, I'm sure as we will go into this kind of discussion, which is more of estimation, financing, bankability, execution, then you will have a wide galaxy of people who are interested in these things, because they are all interested to know how to set up things fast and bring the money as fast as possible, make big money out of it. Everybody is interested in that. Who isn't? So I think that discussion really very interesting. Good.
Very good.
Very nice. Thank you, Sanjay. It has been a master class in refinery design. You brought up. It's a fantastic discussion we had today again. And so we invite everyone to follow that dream refinery project, as you named it, on our platform. And yes, of course, follow our channels, like this episode, share with your contacts to learn about what we are doing here on the platform on Portfolio Planning Plus. So thank you very much again. It's always a great pleasure to talk with you. And we meet again for the follow-up sessions on this project.
Yeah, sure. I will send you one sketch, which I think you will find interesting. So, which you can show to the people also, and then we can go from there. Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you.